In 1935, a school teacher in rural Kentucky noticed something. Half her students opened lunch pails holding nothing but a folded slice of bread. No meat, no cheese, just bread and whatever was cheap enough to put on it. Most people think kids always carried peanut butter and jelly. The truth is stranger. Number 14 on this list was so cold and greasy that children traded it away at every table. Number 3 cost almost nothing and tasted like summer. Hit that subscribe button and let us count down. Number 25, the lard and salt sandwich. Before margarine got cheap, and long before butter was something a poor family kept around, there was lard. Every kitchen had a can of it, rendered from the last hog or bought for pennies. A mother spread a thin layer across a slice of soft white bread and hit it with a pinch of salt. That was lunch. It sounds grim until you understand what it was. Fat and salt and bread, the three things a growing body burns through fastest on a cold morning. A pound of lard cost about 8 cents in the 1930s and greased 100 sandwiches. Kids ate it because it filled them and kept them full until supper. Nobody at that table thought they were being deprived. They thought they were being fed. Number 24, the ketchup sandwich. This is the one that tells you exactly how tight a household was. When the meat ran out and payday was still 3 days away, a mother reached for the one thing every pantry had: a bottle of ketchup, 2 slices of bread, a smear edge to edge, folded over, wrapped in wax paper, dropped in the lunch pail. That was it. The bread soaked up the sweet and the tang, and by noon the whole thing had gone soft and almost jammy. A bottle of ketchup cost around a dime in 1940 and made a week of lunches. Kids in mill towns from Pennsylvania to the Carolinas ate them without a word, because half the other kids had one too. It was not shameful. It was Tuesday. It was just how you got a child through the school day on nothing. Number 23, the sugar sandwich. Here was the treat version of getting by. When there was no jam, no jelly, no honey, and no fruit in the house, a mother buttered a slice of bread as thin as she could manage and sprinkled white sugar across it until it stuck. Fold it over, press it flat, and the sugar half dissolved into the butter and turned into something like a candy filling. Children loved it because it was sweet, and sweet was rare. A 5-pound bag of sugar cost about a quarter in the 1930s. In coal country and on Dust Bowl farms, the sugar sandwich was the closest thing to dessert many kids ever carried to school. It cost almost nothing and made a child feel special. That feeling mattered more than the calories. It was proof that even in a lean house, somebody was still trying to give you a little sweetness. Number 22, the mustard sandwich. Cheaper cousin to the ketchup sandwich and even sharper. When the icebox held nothing but condiments, yellow mustard between 2 slices of bread was a real lunch for a lot of American kids. The bite woke up the plain bread and gave it a flavor strong enough to feel like a meal. Some mothers added a leaf of garden lettuce or a slice of summer tomato to stretch it closer to real. A jar of prepared mustard cost about a nickel and lasted forever. This one showed up most in the Depression years, when a family measured a week by whether the bread held out. Kids who grew up on it still get a strange comfort from the smell of mustard on soft white bread, a lunch table where everyone was in the same boat and nobody said a word about it. Number 21, the cold baked bean sandwich. On Monday, the leftover Saturday night beans became lunch. A mother spooned cold baked beans onto a slice of bread, mashed them flat with a fork so they would not roll out, and topped it with another slice. Wrapped tight in wax paper, it survived a book bag. By noon, the beans had soaked into the bread and turned the whole thing dense and sweet with molasses. A pound of dried navy beans cost about a dime, and Saturday's pot fed the family straight through the middle of the week. In New England especially, the cold bean sandwich was a badge of a frugal house, heavy and filling and full of slow energy. Nothing got wasted. The pot from supper became the lunch pail by Monday, and that was simply how a careful kitchen ran. Number 20, the onion sandwich. This one separates the tough from the tender. A thick slice of raw, sweet onion, a little butter or mayonnaise, salt and pepper, between two slices of white bread. That was a real lunch in a lot of farm households, especially where a garden gave up onions by the sackful. The onion softened in its own moisture by noon, and the sharp bite mellowed into something almost sweet. It was cheap beyond belief, a few cents for an onion that made half a dozen sandwiches. Grown men working the fields ate them by choice. Kids ate them because that was what was packed. The trick was a mild onion, a Vidalia or a Bermuda, since a sharp cooking onion could bring tears at the table. Nobody wanted to sit next to the onion sandwich kid, but he did not care, because he had a full stomach and everyone else was hungry by 2 o'clock. Number 19, the potato chip sandwich. When a bag of chips was in the house, and by the 1950s it often was, a clever lunch stretched them into a full meal. Mayonnaise on both slices to hold everything in place, then a thick handful of chips packed in tight, and the top slice pressed down until the chips cracked and settled. By lunchtime, the chips near the bread had gone soft, while the ones in the center stayed loud and crunchy, and every bite was a different texture. Salt, fat, and crunch all in one. A bag of chips cost about $1 and made several of these. Kids thought it was the greatest thing in the world, a sandwich that crunched. Parents liked that it turned a snack into a meal. It was pure Americana, cheap, and a little ridiculous, and it disappeared the moment someone decided chips belonged on the side. Number 18, the banana and mayonnaise sandwich. This is the one that makes people alive today wrinkle their nose, and the one their grandparents remember with a stubborn love. Sliced ripe banana laid across bread, spread thick with mayonnaise, sometimes with a sprinkle of salt or a few chopped peanuts. It sounds wrong until you understand that in the South, before refrigeration was universal and fresh fruit was a small miracle, a banana was a genuine treat, and mayonnaise was the everyday luxury that made everything richer. The two together made a sweet, creamy, filling sandwich that traveled well in a paper sack. A hand of bananas cost about $1, and a jar of mayonnaise stretched across 100 lunches. Southern kids carried these through the 1940s and the 1950s without a second thought. Today it survives mostly as a story grandchildren refuse to believe. Number 17, the butter and radish sandwich. Here is elegance disguised as poverty, or maybe the other way around. In spring, when the garden gave up its first crop, radishes came in fast and cheap and plentiful. A mother sliced them thin as coins, laid them across bread spread generously with soft butter, and finished it with a good pinch of salt. The butter smoothed the peppery bite, the salt sharpened everything, and the whole thing crunched fresh and cool. It cost almost nothing, since the radishes came from the dirt out back. This was a farm lunch, a taste of the first warm weeks of the year. The French eat this exact thing in fine cafes and call it a delicacy. American farm kids ate it in a one-room schoolhouse and called it lunch. The knowledge that butter and radishes belonged together was passed down without anyone writing it down, and then it slipped away. Number 16. The peanut butter and pickle sandwich. Long before people decided peanut butter only belonged with jelly, kids across the country carried peanut butter and pickle. A thick layer of peanut butter on one slice, thin, sweet, or dill pickle rounds pressed into it, and the top slice on to hold it all down. The salty tang of the pickle cut through the heavy richness in a way that made both taste better, and the crunch broke up the stickiness. A jar of peanut butter and a jar of pickles made lunches for a week. This was a Depression favorite that hung on well into the 1950s, and plenty of people who grew up on it still swear it beats jelly by a mile. It fell out of fashion for no good reason, pushed aside by the marketing that welded peanut butter and jelly together. But the pickle version was there first, and better than anyone gives it credit for. Number 15. The liverwurst sandwich. Braunschweiger, the soft-smoked liver sausage, was one of the cheapest ways to put real meat in a child's lunch. A mother spread the soft pink sausage thick across bread, added a slice of onion or a smear of mustard, and wrapped it up. It was rich, savory, and packed with the iron and B vitamins a growing kid needed most. A pound cost far less than sliced ham or roast beef, which is exactly why it showed up in so many lunch pails from German and working-class households across the Midwest. The taste was strong and deeply savory, the kind of flavor kids either loved or traded away in a heartbeat. Doctors today talk about organ meat like a rediscovered health secret. A generation of American children got it for lunch every week and never knew they were eating something good for them. Number 14. The cold fried egg sandwich. This is the one children traded away at every table, and their loss. In the morning rush, a mother fried an egg hard, slid it between two slices of buttered bread, and packed it while it was still warm, knowing full well it would be stone cold by lunch. A pinch of salt, sometimes pepper, occasionally a smear of ketchup. By noon, the yolk had set firm, and the whole thing had gone dense and a little greasy, and that is exactly why some kids hated it and some kids treasured it. But an egg cost pennies, and a single egg turned two slices of bread into a real protein lunch that stuck to your ribs through the afternoon. This came out of every thrifty kitchen from the 1930s through the 1960s, most of all on farms where eggs were the one thing a family never ran short of. Cold, folded, wrapped in wax paper. Humble and filling and completely forgotten. Here is where things get interesting. Look at these first 11 lunches and you notice something. Almost none of them contain a single ingredient a grocery store could mark up. Lard, bread, an onion, an egg, a spoon of leftover beans. No brand to be loyal to, no advertising budget behind any of it, which is exactly why they vanished. The moment food companies figured out they could sell a mother a foil pouch, a plastic tray, a snack with a cartoon on the box, the homemade sandwich became something to be a little ashamed of. But a large sandwich cost a penny, and a pre-packaged lunch costs $1 and holds less food. These families were not being backward. They were doing math. Most of us have completely forgotten how to do. Quick thing before we keep going. You can grab our cookbook bundles on our website and make these recipes at home. Pause to scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description or pinned comment. Number 13. The apple butter sandwich. In the fall, when the orchards came in and the big copper kettles came out, families across Appalachia and the German settlements of Pennsylvania spent whole days stirring apples down into thick, dark, spiced apple butter. That crock lasted the whole winter, and it turned a plain slice of bread into something wonderful. A mother spread it thick, sometimes with butter underneath, folded it over, and packed it. By lunchtime, the apple butter had soaked into the bread and gone soft and sweet, tasting of cinnamon and cloves and a whole autumn afternoon of work. A batch cost almost nothing but the labor, since the apples were often free from a neighbor's tree. Kids opened these in the depth of winter and tasted October. It was a poor family's jam, richer and darker than anything you could buy, and it disappeared when the kettles went cold and the store shelves filled with jelly in a jar. Number 12, the sardine sandwich. Here was protein by the tin, cheap and shelf-stable and packed with everything a growing body wanted. A can of sardines cost about a nickel, and a mother would mash the little fish right onto bread with a fork, bones and all, add a squeeze of lemon or a slice of onion or a smear of mustard, and press the top slice down. It was oily, strong, and filled a child up completely. The soft bones gave a dose of calcium that most poor kids got nowhere else, and the fish brought the kind of nutrition that meat this cheap had no business delivering. Sardine sandwiches showed up most in coastal and immigrant households, and in any family that had learned to stretch a few cents into a real meal. The smell cleared out the seat next to you, which suited the sardine kid fine. They were eating better than they knew out of a can that cost less than a candy bar. Number 11, the deviled ham sandwich. That little white paper wrapped tin of Underwood deviled ham with the red devil printed on the label was one of the great lunch pail staples of the 20th century. The spiced, mashed ham spread easily across bread, sometimes with mayonnaise or a slice of pickle, and it made a rich, salty, satisfying sandwich that traveled without spoiling. A tin cost a fraction of what sliced deli ham did, and it stretched to make 2 or 3 sandwiches. This was the lunch of a family that wanted to give their child real meat but could not afford the good cuts, and the deviled ham delivered the taste of ham at a price a working household could manage. It sat in pantries from the 1930s clear through the 1970s, a reliable little tin waiting for a lean week. Kids knew the red devil on the label meant a good lunch that day. It has slipped so far from the center of American eating that most kids today have never seen the can. Now here is something the food companies would rather you not think about too hard. Every one of these lunches was built on a single idea that has almost vanished from American life: that a lunch should be assembled from what the house already had, not bought finished. A mother in 1955 opened the icebox and asked, "What can I make from this?" A parent today grabs a box off a shelf and asks, "What can I buy?" That shift did not happen by accident. Billions of advertising dollars went into convincing families that a homemade sandwich was a burden and a store-bought lunch was a gift of love. The truth is the opposite. The homemade lunch was the gift, the small and daily proof that somebody stood in a kitchen and thought about you. We traded that for convenience, and most of us never noticed it was gone. Number 10, the cold bologna sandwich. No lunch pail in working-class America was more common than bologna between 2 slices of white bread. A roll cost about 30 cents a pound and fed a family for days, and a single slice with a little mustard or mayonnaise made a lunch a child would actually eat. Some mothers fried it at breakfast and packed the leftovers cold. Most just laid a cold slice on the bread and wrapped it up. It was mild, filling, and every kid knew exactly what it tasted like, because every kid at the table had one. There was a deep comfort in that sameness. In factory towns from Detroit to Birmingham, the bologna sandwich was the great equalizer, the lunch that meant your family was getting by like everyone else's. It kept a nation of children fed through the middle decades of the century. It never left entirely, but it stopped being the default. and something about the lunch table got a little less shared when it did. Number 9. The pimento cheese sandwich. In the South, this was not poor food, it was proud food, and it went in every lunch pail from the schoolhouse to the cotton mill. Sharp cheddar grated fine, mixed with mayonnaise and chopped pimentos and a little black pepper, then spread thick across soft white bread. It was tangy, creamy, and rich, and it held up for hours in a paper sack in the warm southern air. A block of cheese and a jar of mayonnaise made a big bowl of it, enough for a week, and the pimentos came cheap in a little jar. Southern mothers made it by the batch, and a child who opened a pimento cheese sandwich at lunch felt taken care of. It crossed every line in the South, served at church socials, packed for coal miners, slipped into the lunch boxes of school children. It is called the caviar of the South now and sold in fancy tubs, but it started as a way to make a little cheese feed a lot of people. Number 8. The EGG salad sandwich. When the hens gave more eggs than a family could eat fresh, the extras got boiled, chopped, and turned into egg salad. A few hard-boiled eggs, mashed with mayonnaise, a little mustard, salt and pepper, sometimes a spoon of pickle relish, spread thick on bread. It was rich and creamy and full of protein, and it cost almost nothing when the eggs came from the backyard. The one catch was the heat. Egg salad packed on a warm morning had to be eaten by noon, and plenty of mothers wrapped it tight and hoped for the best. Kids from farm households carried it constantly, and it showed up in city lunch pails too, wherever eggs were cheap. It was a lunch that felt like a small luxury made from the humblest ingredient in the kitchen. The knowledge of how to make it well, how much mayonnaise, how fine to chop, lived in the hands of mothers who never measured a thing. Number 7. The cold meatloaf sandwich. Sunday's meatloaf became Monday's lunch, and Monday's lunch was one of the best sandwiches a kid could hope for. A thick, cold slice, dense with the bread and onion and egg that stretched the beef, laid on white bread with a smear of ketchup or a swipe of mustard. Cold meatloaf sliced clean and held together in a way it never did hot, and the flavors had settled overnight into something deeper and better. It cost the household nothing extra because it was simply the meal from the night before given a second life. A pound of ground beef fed the family at supper and still left enough for 2 or 3 sandwiches. This was the reward for a mother who cooked with tomorrow in mind, and every thrifty kitchen in America cooked that way. The roast, the meatloaf, the chicken, and all of it came back around as lunch, and the cold meatloaf sandwich was the crown of the whole system. Number 6. The cream cheese and olive sandwich. Here was a touch of elegance in a paper sack. Softened cream cheese mixed with chopped green olives and a little of the olive brine, spread across bread, sometimes on the thin white bread that felt fancy. The cream cheese was smooth and rich, the olives salty and sharp, and the two together tasted like something served at a ladies' luncheon rather than packed for a school day. It cost more than a large sandwich, but far less than sliced meat, and a block of cream cheese and a jar of olives made a whole batch. This one showed up in households doing a little better, or in the lunch of a child whose mother wanted to send something with a bit of style. It was popular from the 1940s into the 1960s and turned up on every party tray of the era. It was creamy, salty, and just unusual enough to feel special, and it has drifted so far out of fashion that most people have never even heard of it. Here is what nobody says out loud about all of this. The families packing these lunches were not thinking about nutrition science, but they were doing all of it by instinct. The liverwurst gave iron. The sardines gave calcium and good fat. The beans and the egg salad gave protein at a price meat could not touch. The radishes and onions came straight from a living garden. These were not lunches of desperation dressed up as virtue. They were the honest result of people who could not afford to waste a single thing and who had learned across generations how to turn almost nothing into enough. We got rich enough to stop, and the moment we could afford to forget these lessons, we forgot them. The knowledge did not disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because we stopped needing it. Number 5, the cold pork and beans in a thermos. Not every lunch was a sandwich. A wide-mouth thermos changed the game, and by the 1940s, a lot of kids carried a warm lunch of pork and beans straight from the can. A mother heated a can on the stove in the morning, spooned it into the thermos, and by lunchtime it was still warm enough to feel like a real meal. A can cost about a dime and fed a child completely, thick and sweet and studded with the little cube of salt pork that came inside. On cold winter days, a warm thermos of beans was a small miracle, the difference between a shivering child and a fed one. It required no skill beyond opening a can and delivered more filling food for the money than almost anything else a parent could pack. The thermos was the great equalizer of the cold months, and it kept a generation of children warm from the inside out. Number 4, the peanut butter and banana sandwich. Before it belonged to a famous singer, before it became a novelty, the peanut butter and banana sandwich was simply one of the smartest, cheap lunches a family could make. Peanut butter spread thick on both slices to seal in the fruit, ripe banana sliced in the middle, pressed together until the banana half melted into the peanut butter. It was sweet, rich, stuck to your ribs, and gave a kid real energy from cheap, shelf-stable ingredients. A jar of peanut butter and a hand of bananas cost next to nothing and made a week of lunches, and unlike jelly, the banana added actual food to the sandwich instead of just sugar. Southern kids carried these by the thousand from the 1930s onward, and grown men working hard jobs ate them for the same reason. It is the one lunch on this list most people have actually tasted, and even so, most families stopped packing it the day the prepackaged snack took over. Number 3, the tomato sandwich. This one cost almost nothing and tasted like summer. In August, when the garden tomatoes came in faster than a family could eat them, the tomato sandwich ruled the southern lunch table. A thick slice of a sun-warmed tomato, bread spread edge to edge with mayonnaise, a heavy pinch of salt, and a grind of black pepper, and nothing else. The tomato juice soaked into the bread and the mayonnaise until the whole thing threatened to fall apart, which is exactly why people who grew up on it eat it standing over the sink to this day. It cost only what a tomato cost, which in high summer was nothing at all. For 3 months a year, this was lunch across the entire South, packed in wax paper and eaten a little soggy by noon, and loved anyway. It was the taste of the garden at its peak, a lunch that only existed while the tomatoes were ripe, and that is exactly what made it precious. Number 2, the ham biscuit. In the country South, the cold biscuit with a slice of country ham tucked inside was the lunch a hard-working family was proud to pack. The biscuits were baked at breakfast in a cast-iron skillet, seasoned by decades of use, and the leftovers got split and filled with a thin slice of the salty, smoky cured ham that hung in the smokehouse out back. Cold, dense, and deeply flavored, The ham biscuit held together perfectly in a lunch pail and needed no refrigeration because the salt in the country ham kept it safe for hours. The ham was expensive at the store but nearly free to a family that raised and cured its own hog, and a single ham stretched across a whole winter of these. A child who opened a ham biscuit at the lunch table had the envy of the room. It is a regional treasure now, sold at fine southern restaurants, but it started in the calloused hands of farm wives who baked before dawn. Number 1. The molasses sandwich. At the top of this list is the plainest thing of all, so humble that naming it almost feels like a letdown, and that is exactly why it matters. 2 slices of bread, a thick pour of dark molasses or sorghum syrup, folded over and pressed flat. That was the lunch that carried more poor American children through the school day than any other, from the Depression through the lean years after the war. Molasses was the cheapest sweetener in the country, a gallon lasting for months and costing pennies, and it turned a slice of plain bread into something a hungry child would run to eat. It was sweet, sticky, soaked into the bread, and delivered the quick energy a kid needed to make it to supper. In the mountain south, in the mill towns, in the sharecropper cabins of the Delta, the molasses sandwich was simply what you carried when there was nothing else, and there was almost never anything else. It fed generations of children who grew up to build this country, and it asked for nothing but a slice of bread and a spoonful of the cheapest sweet in the store. Nothing on this list did more for less, and nothing has been more completely forgotten by a nation that got rich enough to leave it behind. Here is my challenge. Pack one of these this week. Just one. The tomato sandwich, the pimento cheese, the cold meatloaf, the molasses on soft white bread. Then come back and tell me if it was as sad as you expected, because I made the fried bologna and the tomato sandwich, and I have not looked at a plastic lunch tray the same way since. Drop the one you are going to try in the comments. I want to know if the peanut butter and pickle gets more love than the banana and mayonnaise, and whether anyone else's grandmother packed a molasses sandwich and called it a treat. Because these were not lunches of shame. They were proof that a full lunch pail could be built out of almost nothing, and that somebody loved you enough to build it.